Caitlin. I'm the VP of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships at MyHealthMath. We are a company that's focused on helping employees choose the health plan that best protects them based on their specific needs. So that's what we do. And I oversee the marketing and strategic partnership side of that.
Hi, I am Victor Rodriguez. I am a principal product designer here at Praxent. My role is to closely work with our clients, their users, and our designers on the vision, direction, and execution of a product's experience. More broadly, I like to think about it as really creating meaningful solutions to complex problems. And I had the wonderful, delightful opportunity of working closely with MyHealthMath and Caitlin and her team on the next gen of the product over the last, year and a half now, right? So
yeah, now making all the final additions to it. Very exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Looking forward to those.
Praxent, you guys helped us with a lot of things. As I'm saying this, it's like hitting me all of the pieces, right? So the original goal, the reason we pulled you in was because we wanted to create a web application, which we did with you, called Decision Doc, to give employees personalized guidance about their benefits. And so that was like the main goal. But even, and I'll talk about that in a second, but even around that, we realized we really need to do a whole new rebranding to support the product, and even our own company brand. So we ended up doing all kinds of branding work, and you guys helped us do a rebrand. So that just felt like squeezed in there as well. And then in corresponding with that rebrand, you also helped us with our website. So again, the biggest focus was the product, which I'll talk about in a moment, but I just think it's, I want to make sure I mention that you've also helped us with our brand and our website. So to create basically this consistency in all of our digital places that we have. We wanted to create a user-friendly platform that helped employees understand and choose the right health plan. We already had a really robust back-end system, but the user experience itself was a bit outdated. So it was really that front-end product that needed some work. So we needed to really start from scratch, create that front-end user experience, and that's what you guys did for us. When we thought about that product, what it was going to look like, what it was going to feel like, it was really important for us that it reflected this like deeply personalized experience. We wanted to really stand out in how we were so personalized in terms of a few different things. So one, in terms of the data we collected from the user about their health needs, which is what ultimately informs the guidance we give them about their plan choice. So that was one piece of where this incredible personalization had happened. And then the recommendations themselves, we wanted to make sure they were, again, focused on that individual and really transparent about their cost and really what was going into the recommendation. How do you do that in a way that isn't overwhelming, but still lets people dig in and understand what they're looking at and why it reflects their specific needs. And then lastly, in terms of this personalized approach, is we really wanted to focus on the support that was available to them. So up until now, many users engaged with us actually over the phone. They'd have a call with us and share their medical needs. This was really great. Helped us learn a lot about people's needs and how they communicate their health needs. But obviously, as we've expanded a lot, that's not a model that could, carry us forward forever. That said, we really wanted to retain the high touch support that we have there, find a way to make sure that got embedded into the new product. So it was kind of all these different pieces in terms of personalization when you're thinking about data, but also just that personal support that we wanted to make sure people had a high touch support. So those are the things we were thinking about and that you guys really helped us kind of hone in on in terms of what we were looking for.
No, I appreciate that. When you guys came to me, I thought it was such a unique offering that you guys had, right? It was, I've worked for large companies and building kind of benefits portals and working closely with the benefits teams and the employees to try to understand why isn't this working? Why are people so confused about the choices they need to make? And in some of these companies, they'd have 6 medical offerings and you'd sit there and go, yeah, of course you can't make a decision. What's the difference between a gold package and a silver package and things like that. And so it was a point of frustration for the teams that I worked on for quite a while. And so you guys come along and you have this product that says, help us provide your information, share your details, and we'll guide you in terms of what probably works best for you in this calendar year. And so I thought that was super unique. And I was really excited to work on this project because I felt that there was truly a need in the space. And so thinking about the employees, thinking about, all right, so how do I prepare for the following year? A lot of times employees will just go ahead and say, whatever happened last year, I'll just kind of roll it over and do it for the next year. And they're not necessarily considering potential prescriptions that they need to fill for a dependent, or they're not thinking about a major surgery that might be coming up the following year. And I think one of the important things with this product was to think about that in particular in preparation for the following year. And then guide them along that process. And so for us, it was really, taking that and then taking what you guys were looking for in terms of your product goals, your end goals, and then trying to marry that to create something that users really found value in and we're excited to use, right? Benefits, administration, insurance, all that stuff can be overwhelming, confusing, a little bit off-putting, we'll say, and like overly complex for whatever reason. And so that was another thing. We wanted to make this feel like it wasn't complex. We were looking at how do we speed up the process? How do we get users to that end result as quickly as possible? We wanted to look at, as you mentioned before, you guys had this structure of this telephone-based kind of customer interviews that was really guiding that process. And you had a lot of positive response from that, right? And so, as you said, how do we emulate that with an online experience? And so that was another thing that we were constantly thinking about. Another thing was trying to instill some level of security and privacy and trust in the users, right? So you have a lot of employees might think, oh, they're going to share this information with my employer, or are they going to see it? Do I attach myself to this at all? And so it's like, no, we wanted to make sure that they felt comfortable and safe the same way they were in your interviews in this process. Those were the kind of things at a kind of micro level we were looking at. And then more broadly, we had a couple of design principles that we were really trying to hone in on. So some of those were bridging the knowledge gap. That could be in two ways, right? So if we're talking about knowledge, we're talking about knowledge of the system, and then we're talking about knowledge of the benefits and what's going on around them, right? And so with regard to knowledge of a system, anytime you come in to a new system, there is that moment or moments where you're trying to understand, how does the system work? What value is it trying to provide? How do I get from one place to the next? So how do we speed up that gap between what's going on to that aha moment? Oh, okay, I understand what this is and I want to move forward. And then the other one is the knowledge gap in terms of all things benefits insurance, right? And so looking for those opportunities where we can simplify language or break up patterns and content. And this ties into another principle that we were kind of going through, which was trying to minimize that task perception, right? So every time they get to a screen, the first thing they do is estimate the time it will take to figure out, how to answer this problem. And so we wanted to try to see how we can minimize that each time, give them little kind of breadcrumbs throughout so that they can kind of feel like they're moving swiftly through the process. And that will kind of essentially minimize decision fatigue. And the other thing was to reduce cognitive load, right? So cognitive load for us is like the mental effort essentially required to complete a task. And so for us, I think we wanted to minimize that so that, again, it feels like this is an easygoing process. This isn't something that is overwhelming me and then I'm going to bail out of it before I get my results. And so those were the kinds of the things that we were thinking about as we were going through this as well. And, also making it delightful, right? Making it a fun experience. And because I don't think benefits insurance and fun is necessarily how people associate those things. So
yeah, no, I think I'm glad you brought up all those points, because one of the things you said earlier, just when you mentioned trust and you mentioned, wanting to make sure it was secure and people felt like they had that security, so that built trust. And then everything else you talked about, though, also gets back to that question around trust, because at the end of the day, what we wanted was a platform people trusted. So they trusted that it was secure, but they also were able to understand it, get through it easily so that it made sense to them, which helps them trust it, and ultimately get to guidance that's about them that they can trust. And I really harp on the word trust here because it is ultimately the biggest thing we care about when creating this product. If you give employees a product, if you give them something to help them choose their benefits, and they don't trust the guidance, they're not going to do anything. It's just like a waste of time and resources, frankly. So it was really important for us when we were thinking about what we wanted to deliver to the employer and to their employees. We wanted to make sure this was a product people, again, understood. The recommendations made sense to them. So they understood the terminology. It was easy for them to get through, and it was secure and confidential. And then again, really focused on them as an individual so that when they got to that final recommendation page that we'll show in a little bit, they really believed in it. They bought into it, and then they actually made a change. And that's something that's been, so critical, because like you alluded to earlier, people often don't make a change with their benefits. They go into open enrollment and they don't do anything. They roll over the benefits year to year. And that's not people's fault. That is just because it's too confusing and it was too stressful. And I get it because I used to be the same way. So no judgment here. And unless you're having a giant life change, you really don't think about it. And even when you are having a giant life change, then you're just stressed because you don't know what to do. So, the reality is health needs change every year. We should always be looking at it, revisiting this. If people don't, and because again, it's too hard. So having something here that was easy to use, personalized, supportive, and really, again, something they could trust. I think that was the end goal, and that's what I think we did really well together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
We thought today we'd walk you through a demo of what this actually looks like. We've been talking about it and saying how great it is. So now I need to actually show it. So we're just going to run through some of the highlights of it, give this high level view of, what does it do? How does it work? And, what are the cool things that we did together to make it, again, this really much more personalized, trustworthy experience. So what you should be seeing is Decision Doc. That is the name of the product, the Decision Doctor, if you will, a play with on the medical side, but at the end of the day, just really helping you make a choice. This is what employees see when they come here. So typically, the way this works is that we, MyHealthMath, will build out all of the plan details that an employer has. So by that, I mean we load their plan design into Decision Doc. That happens beforehand. So that when an employee comes here, they're going to be able to compare their different plan options. So just to give an idea of how that works, typically we'll have a link right on your enrollment platform. So an employee would click on that link. It would say, hey, let's get you some help choosing your health plan. And then you're going to come here to Decision Doc, where they're going to share their specific health needs. And at the end, get a recommendation about which health plan is right for them based on those needs. I know we spent some time talking about, really what made this page important, this landing page. It was the front door. It's the first thing you're going to see. So let me stop, Victor. You're the one who actually designed it. Want to talk a little bit about it?
Absolutely. One thing I do want to say was kudos. As you can see here, we have our little mascot, the turtle. I know that was one of the first things when we were having conversations. We were talking about how do we make things feel personable and a little bit, light, then feel like there's a kind of guided experience. And I know you threw out a mascot. We named a couple of different animals, and I think it was one of our wonderful designers, Doug, that come up with this little turtle that we named Theo to kind of walk us through the process. And you'll see how Theo is kind of utilized throughout the experience. But I did want to say kudos on that, because that was an idea that was from the mind of Caitlin, right? This landing page, I think, again, ties to some of the pain points and opportunities that we highlighted a little bit earlier, which was essentially we wanted for them to know when they came here that all their information was confidential, right? None of it was going to be shared with their employer. This was just a way for them to answer some questions and get a response in terms of what the medical plan works best for them. And then we want to reiterate that with regard to, okay, what is the value this is going to provide? What is the end goal here? So that's all about savings, as you can see in that second card there. And it was really just to let them know, like, this is our value prop. This is why you're doing this. And then we wanted to also communicate to them that it at least have some level of expectation around the time investment of them for getting those results. And so as part of this process, we spend a lot of time trying to consolidate questions, trying to make sure that they only see the questions that are most important to them, to speed up the process to the results. And so we felt that no matter what avenue you took, this was a pretty swift process, considering all the questions that could have potentially been asked of them, or was originally asked of them in the initial phase, right?
We've had it rolled out for about a year now, and we've had typically it takes, less than 5 minutes for an employee to go through this. So we, again, just doing a great job to keep it a detailed but not overwhelming experience. All right. So when the employee, gets started at Decision Doc, one of the first things they're going to do is decide how they want to engage with us. So they actually get two options. They can stay in the web app and go through a series of questions about their health needs, thinking about their medical needs as well as their pharmacy needs. And like I said, it takes about 5 minutes to go through it. And then they're going to get immediate guidance about which health plan is right for them. And that's what we'll walk you through in a minute. But I want to just also point out that they have this other option called schedule a call. And this is right back to where we started as a company, where we used to we conducted all of these interviews over the phone. And again, we got a lot of good feedback there. So we didn't want to lose that. We wanted to keep that as an option for folks. So basically as an employee going through this, you get to choose your path and you can go online, stay online, or if you want to, you can click the schedule now button and choose a time that works for you. And then our analysts will call and go through these questions with you in person. And what we found, giving people the option, is that, a lot of folks stay in the web app, definitely. Unsurprisingly, that's the preferred experience for the average user. But a lot of folks actually do schedule a call. Again, a much smaller percentage, but still a significant number. And what we found is those folks are usually more people who have more complicated medical needs, feel more comfortable talking to a person about those needs. And, also folks who maybe are just sick of being on their screens or not super tech savvy, whatever the case might be. This does still get used. And I think it speaks to just wanting to make sure that we had an experience that spoke to each person's needs. And so if you're the kind of person that wants to be on your screen, most of us are totally fine. You've got the web app. But if you're somebody that really would prefer to talk to a live person and, again, particularly about something as sensitive as health, that option's still available to you. Victor, anything to add? Because again, I know this was a lot of thought went into this option.
Well, no, I really appreciated that you guys wanted to keep this kind of choose your own path, choose your own adventure experience for the users, and really keep that part of being able to schedule a call and talk to a human being. No matter how much thought and effort you put into creating an experience that makes the users comfortable and want to use the web product, there's still going to be a subset there that will just want to talk to somebody else. We'll just want to talk to a human. And you'll see as we go through the process, want to allow for users to even opt out of the web experience and go to, speak with a human being or speak with a person throughout the process as well. So it's not even just, all right, as I enter into an experience, which path do I choose? You also want to allow for the user to bail on that if something becomes super complex or they realize that they have some questions around certain things.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that because hey, Help Center link, always at the top of their screen. We made sure that was there so that people did have that opportunity if they were going through the questionnaire online, realize that they wanted to talk to a real person, very easy for them to do so. So yeah, that got built right in. All right. So then they're going to get started. The way we set this up, and by we, I mean you, the way you designed it was to have these 3 sections of questions. And you mentioned this earlier, but to make sure it was kind of broken up for people so they knew, okay, first I'm going to answer some questions about me and my family. So kind of the basics about who's on the plan, who do we want to factor in for coverage. Then we'll talk about major health events and then wrap up with routine care. And once I get through those 3 sections, I'm going to get my results. And this, I think, was a really cool idea because of the fact that it did break things up for the user. It let them realize, okay, I'm partway done getting there, and just made the whole experience, I think, more friendly. What do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think you covered it exactly right. I think this is where we probably spent the most time trying to figure it out. Right, was trying to map out over 100 questions at some point. And for us, we knew that most users wouldn't answer all of those questions. And so what we tried to do was lay all the questions out like on a screen, and then start to group them into sections or chapters that we felt naturally aligned with each other. And that took quite a bit too. Was where do we put this one? Does this fall under a major event, or is this something just routine? And so even the names for these quite a lot of feedback cycles and narrowing down. But yeah, so I think ultimately, as you said here, we really wanted to treat this as a narrative. And so we created these 4 essential chapters that allowed for users to kind of, one, get a sense of, at quick glance, what kind of questions we're going to be asking, what they need to know before they get into the questionnaire. But also, we wanted to kind of decrease that perceived length of the process. We wanted to minimize task perception, as we mentioned earlier. So this way was kind of our solution to doing that. So yeah, here was an example where we were looking at, again, we wanted to reduce cognitive load. So what we did employ here was something along the lines of what we call progressive disclosure. And so I believe on the original application, we just had enter in their names. And then for each question that we had, you had a text field for you to enter whether or not they were in there or not. And so you had these kind of like large pages of just text boxes. And so for us, it was just like, let's select a name here, if you don't mind, Caitlin. And so what we created was these flyouts where you can actually enter in the data, and they would only respond if you actually had data to enter. So again, employing progressive disclosure not only creates a clean experience, reduces task perception, but also reduces cognitive load on the user. So if you had clicked just me, you would have seen none of that and you would have kept going. And so those were kinds of decisions we were making as we were going through this experience. The one thing here that was interesting as well was in terms of ordering the different chapters, right? So generally, when you're kind of going through an experience, you want to provide the easiest questions up front and the shortest section up front, because then again, that then decreases the perceived effort of the task at hand. And so we did play around in terms of like rearranging sections in terms of health events and routine care. We knew about you was going to be the simplest. If you're a single person, it would be 2 questions and then you're done, right? And so that was another thing that we looked at in terms of even the order of each of the sections.
So now we're into the health events. This page is pretty cool because, again, it reflects what you were saying earlier about we don't want to ask questions, all the questions that we had. We wanted to figure out how do we organize it and make sure that I'm only answering questions that are relevant to me and my family. So one of the ways you guys did that was with this first page in the health event section, where basically I can click on any of these boxes. So if I want to factor in a surgery for this year, I can click on surgeries, and then it's going to ask me additional questions about my surgeries. If I'm thinking about having a pregnancy, I can click on pregnancy. And then it will ask me questions about that. I can click on, I don't need any of these services. And then we're just going to jump right to the end of the section. So making it super easy for me as a user to just click on what I need. And then Decision Doc will ask additional questions that only reflect my needs, not all the potential needs I could have. So this has been definitely, we've gotten tons of good feedback, frankly, on this page. As well. We have another one kind of later on that does the same thing, but just this ability to group things, make it super easy for me to choose what is relevant for me and then only answer questions that are relevant for me.
As you mentioned earlier, looking at those hundreds of questions, we realized that one of the main solutions there was to provide these filter questions. And so that was a way for us to shorten the experience for users and only put the information that's most important to them up front and center. And the only other thing I'd tie into this as well is the aesthetic of this. One of the things that we did do across this experience was provide these components that were maybe you'd say a little bit oversized. So these cards are pretty big. The copy up at the top is large. You've got these images that tie into that. So it's easily scannable. And for us, that was all tied into decreasing the perceived complexity of the system itself. There's the sense of larger buttons creating the sense of ease of use. If you think about the Staples large button there, that's the idea behind it. So we really wanted to open up the space, be mindful of space, because each kind of screen is a chance for the users to be successful. And so every word and element has to be clear and make an impact. And so that was kind of our thought process going into some of the componentizing of the different selection lists that we had within the system.
Makes sense to me. All right, let's show what this looks like. So in theory, I'm a person going through this and I maybe want to factor in the surgery. So when we think about healthcare costs, obviously something like a surgery or any of these are going to have a pretty drastic effect on your overall health costs for the year. So I'll click on surgeries, and then it's going to ask me some follow-up questions about what surgery do I want to factor in. We start by just asking, hey, what part of the body? Reminds me a lot of other tools that exist for people that, you click on part of the body and then ask you follow-up questions. I know a lot of us that maybe are a little bit hypochondriac are familiar with these tools and they work really well. So I think it's a cool setup. Victor, want to add anything here?
Yeah, no, I think that was the visual that we had when we were going into this particular question the whole time, was that the human anatomy and potentially having like a skeleton here. But really, again, this is another filter question where we had all of these potential surgeries that they could have. The way to group them, and we thought naturally, was head, shoulders, knees, and toes, essentially, right? And so I think this was a good solve for being able to parse out some of the surgeries that might be, like, I don't know what that surgery is, but I know it has to do with my finger or my hand. Again, trying to laymanize the experience for people so that they can kind of make the right decisions so that they can get the right results.
All right. So maybe my partner is considering having a knee surgery. So I'm going to click on hip, leg, foot, and then it will show me a list of potential surgeries that I can choose from. So maybe my partner is considering having a knee replacement. I click on knee replacement. It's going to ask me who. So give that to Joe. I can add it. And then it will ask me a follow-up question about whether or not it requires overnight stay. Obviously, the answer to this will affect cost, but I don't have to know the answer. I can just say, I don't know. And then it will just factor in the higher cost. So makes it pretty easy for the user. This is
another example here of where we tried to laymanize the terminology for the users. I think we had inpatient, outpatient, and we knew that certain employees wouldn't necessarily understand what those things are, but some people do as well. So by providing it and saying overnight stay or no overnight stay, and then have inpatient and outpatient in parentheses, not only are we kind of speaking to them at their level, but it's also an educational spot, right? Where they can sit there and say, oh, that's what inpatient means. So those are little things that we were doing as we were going through the process to try to see where we can, again, kind of reduce cognitive load, but also educate and bridge that knowledge gap.
Yeah. So routine care, we have a similar landing page to what we saw earlier, where we say, hey, do you want to factor in any of these additional, more kind of common care needs you might have throughout the year? So obviously, something like your prescription cost does affect your total cost for the year and really will affect which plan is right for you when you think about coverage. So that one's always a big one. But again, all of these are really important to ask about. So making sure we give people the opportunity to put in information about their mental health care, allergy treatments, substance use, all of these things that can, again, just so drastically affect their cost for the year and affect what coverage is right for them. So I'm going to click on prescriptions. I'll just do that one to keep it simple. And then with prescriptions, we're going to split this into actually 3 different questions. We've got Theo here who lets folks know a little bit of information about, what they're looking at and why we're asking the questions that we're asking. Theo is also great because Theo can link to additional resources. So for example, with prescriptions where some drugs are covered under the ACA, Theo is great because Theo can remind folks of that, just kind of help people get educated about coverage that's just part of preventive care, part of the coverage that is just given to them. So we want to make sure Theo's there for that. But again, in terms of prescriptions, the way we have this set up is we ask about generic prescriptions first, then we're going to ask about brand, and then we're going to ask about specialty. And I'll stop there. Victor, want to chat a little bit about what you were thinking when you designed this page?
Yeah, I know we went through a couple designs here, but for us, we again wanted people to really think about a particular prescription type at each stage. So that was the focus there, was breaking it out into generic, and then we get into brand and things like that. Again, just trying to speed up the process and get people thinking about only one particular thing at a time. Again, I think the other thing to point out here as well is we have that glossary up at the top. So if there is any sort of language or anything along those lines that they don't know about or they don't understand, they can always click the glossary and look for that terminology there. But yeah.
Once you've gone through all your sections, we've gone through the about you, we've gone through major health events, we've gone through routine care. Now it's time for the employee to get their results. So, we wanted to make sure this was immediate. You didn't have any lag time. You go through it, you click, go to next section, and it's going to immediately pull up your result. So the way this is set up, the employee is going to right away see their winning plan. In this sample scenario we have built out here, the employee is choosing between 3 potential plans. So right here, we say, hey, here's the plan that came out in the lead. Right away, we call it their winning plan. So here's the plan that came out in the lead. And then we also let them know a couple important things. So first off, here's who's factored in for coverage on the plan. So this is the family plan because I've shared myself, my husband, and my child. So really important for me to understand that they're all factored in for coverage. And then also these key factors. So this is the information that's I've shared that's affecting my cost. So one of the things that's pretty cool about Decision Doc is that it's very easy for you to update your usage. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So I can very easily add or drop a service. But right here in the key factors, I want to be able to remember, okay, this report is factoring in a surgery, factoring in some office visits, and it's factoring in prescriptions. And that's what's affecting my cost here. That's what I'm looking at for coverage. Then as I scroll down, I'm going to start to get information about why did that plan come out in the lead. There's actually 3 different charts I'm going to walk through real quick. And so this first chart, we're looking at the total employee premium plus their estimated out-of-pocket cost minus the employer's contribution to one of those tax savings vehicles. So HSA, FSA, HRA. We also subtract out the tax savings related to the employee's contribution. So if the employee tells us that they're considering contributing to an HSA, those contributions come with tax savings. We want to subtract those tax savings out as well. So again, a lot of detail there. We keep it very high level here with this total cost. But then as we scroll, we actually break those numbers down for people because people are interested. They want to understand how we're doing this calculation. So that's total cost. We also have total savings, which is how much they could save on either one of these plans in comparison to that most expensive plan. And then also worst case scenario, which is the most they could spend in a year. So this is if they were to max out on everything. So have a really costly event, max out on everything, then this is how much they would spend on each of these plans. Really helpful for like a risk averse person to be able to see this and understand, what is my worst case scenario if something went awry. So we have the winning plan breakdown here. This is where we start to explain, how did we calculate that total health cost? So breaking it down by that annual premium, like I mentioned earlier, against their net out-of-pocket cost. So that's that out-of-pocket cost, but also factoring in the benefits related to their HRA, HSA, or FSA, as the case may be. We also just highlight some important numbers for people here. So what does their monthly premium look like? What's that out-of-pocket limit, the deductible on this plan? And then that worst case scenario number, just to help people start to get an idea of, what are kind of the key factors that go along with this plan that we're recommending. So now they can compare their annual premium across plans, that net out of pocket across plans, which adds up to that total health cost, which matches the chart I showed earlier. And so now they can start to see, again, how we're doing the calculation, how those costs break down. Theo here is hanging out. We got lots of little Theo call outs. Theo does pretty much what I'm doing. Theo says, hey, here's what you're looking at. Here's your total cost. Here's your total savings, and so on. Theo's pretty cool because Theo can be customized. So one of the things we've learned is that employers a lot of times have particular messages about certain plans that they want to get out. So very easy for us to customize the Theo callouts by client. I also want to hit on the cost details tab. There's a lot here. So I always like to let people know there's a lot of numbers I'm about to show you, but it's pretty cool. And for a lot of people, it's their favorite part of the report. So the cost details tab, we kept it in a tab because we didn't want to overwhelm people. But for those who want to dig in, they can. And this is breaking down how we're doing the math. So looking at their premium cost, how do these break down in terms of the employer contribution versus the employee's contribution on each of their plans? Looking at the net out-of-pocket total. So I talked about this earlier, but this net out-of-pocket is looking at the HSA, HRA, or FSA if the plan has one, the benefits from those savings vehicles. So what are those benefits on each plan, as well as added to the medical cost in order to get that net out-of-pocket cost for the year for the employee. So now they can understand, hey, here's how we calculated that. And then we actually break down the benefits from those savings vehicles. So for the HSA, we can show, hey, here's the employer contribution. Here's your tax savings. For the HRA, we call that out as well. So that's for the plan that it's eligible for. If there was a plan that was eligible for an FSA, we would do the same thing here as well. So making it really easy for people to understand the benefits that go along with those savings vehicles and understand how they break down depending on the plan. Medical cost breakdown, people love this one because it's actually showing you where your money goes. So for each plan, is your money going to a deductible versus copay versus coinsurance? There's really transparency into costs you don't get anywhere else. And then really breaking down how we calculate the worst case scenario figure. There's a ton here, no question about it. But I'm telling you, when people are being recommended to move to a different plan than they were on before, which happens quite a bit, right? Because like we said earlier, 90% of people are rolling over their health plan every year. You really shouldn't do that. So then when they use a tool like this, a lot of times it will tell them to do something different. And while somebody like me looks at, these charts and is like, all right, I get it. Awesome. If I go on this plan, clearly significantly cheaper for me over the year, I get it. I'm in. Somebody else may be like, well, I'm still a little skeptical. We talked about trust earlier. Really important for them to have the opportunity to click in, dig into the numbers, really understand how we're doing the math, so that by the time they go to their enrollment platform to enroll, they're feeling really confident about which plan they're choosing. And they know that we're not trying to push them in one plan or the other. We're just doing the numbers for them and showing them, how those numbers break down and really how it will affect their cost. Lots of cool things we did here just to make things even more kind of friendly and provide overall support. So we're all about the numbers. We want to show people the numbers, but we also want to give people the resources to understand those numbers. So we have an entire resource library that we put together on our website. And these little call outs here can be filled in with resources from our site. So, link over to that resource library, but they're all customizable. So again, we can put in any resources that the employer wants here. If they want to put their benefit guides here, choose a time that works for them. And then our analysts will actually call them and walk through this report. So if there's anything that's confusing here, anything they don't get, they can actually just talk to one of our analysts who explain, exactly what they're looking at. And so for busy HR teams, this is great because they know questions are not going to come back to them. They're going to come to us. And for us, we continue to act as that neutral third party that employees can trust and talk through what they're seeing.
We had so many conversations around what this experience would be like. Okay, so now I answer all these questions. Now I've got all this data, right? And that was one of the things that I think that shocked me when we were going through the initial stages of understanding MyHealthMath and Decision Doc and what it could do, was how robust it was and how much data points you actually did have on the back end. And so for us, we knew, and we had conversations with you, that there were people that would just want to know the high level, just give me who the winner is, how much I'm going to save, what's the total cost, who's covered, and be done with it, right? But we also knew that there were a lot of people that really value digging into the numbers, digging into the details. And so from a design perspective, the challenge was, how do we present all of this information without overwhelming them? And so we, again, chose that choose your own adventure kind of style, where we created these large modules for particular high-level data points that they can then use and interact with and see how it changes depending on how they're viewing the data. And then allow them, as you mentioned, to opt in to more details, right? So those cost details that we had down below are really for those that really kind of want to get into the nitty-gritty. But we didn't want to show that. So we had these expand collapse cards so that, again, it's on the user to opt in so they're not overwhelmed when they land here. I think here, this winning plan breakdown was just a concept that we came up with in terms of, okay, now we're looking at all the data. What are the things that I care the most about around this plan that you've recommended? And so the premiums, we identified as a premium, the out-of-pocket limit, the deductible, and the worst case scenario. So here was another example of how we can visualize this data in different ways. So if one data point or one visual is not necessarily painting the full story, here's another way that we can actually represent that data so that you can understand what we're recommending a little bit better. We know that it's always a challenge for employers when they're trying to communicate all of these data points to the users around a particular plan benefit. And most times they'll get a plan benefit summary or a details document, and they'll come from a particular insurance provider. And that's it. And it's not always the most scannable or the most readable. And so what we wanted to do was try to take those documents that everybody gets handed out and parse it out in a way that made a lot of sense to the user, as opposed to just throwing numbers out there and things like that. So a lot of it was around, okay, so trying to provide groupings and spacing so that the user can understand what they're actually looking at and understand the breakdown a little bit better.
So they can download this report. It's going to be a PDF. They can have it, take it with them to their enrollment platform. And by take it with them, I mean you can download it and have it on their screen. They also can click on enrollment plan, which will bring them right back to their enrollment platform. So it was really important to make this a super smooth journey for the employee. So I mentioned up front, The optimal experience is where an employer has put a link on the enrollment platform. So I'm there, I go to enroll. First step is to get decision support. Click on that link, come here, go through the questions, get my recommendation, click and enroll and plan, brings me back to my enrollment platform, and I do that. So we set it up that way. And then we added this neat feature that lets employees make a change. So if I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, this is great, but what if I don't have that surgery? Sometimes either elective, maybe I'm thinking about having a pregnancy and I can't do, no one can predict when that's going to happen. Super easy for me to click on edit responses. Stick with the surgery example, go back to health events, remove that surgery, and then click update my results. And then you'll see all of the costs have changed. So very cool. Other piece of this that I think is great and worth mentioning, helping employees very easily add drop usage and compare, basically model out a couple of different scenarios and see how that affects their costs. We added dental vision. So now instead of just getting guidance on your health plan, you can also get guidance on your dental plan and or your vision plan. So the way this works is that we've added a couple questions in the questionnaire about dental vision needs. And then when you get to your report, you'll see this should look very familiar. You still get your healthcare report right away, letting you know, here's which health plan is right for you. But then you can click over to dental and you're going to get guidance on your dental plan. And then do the same thing for vision. With each of these, they can click download and get a PDF of all of the guidance, so the medical and the dental combined. But again, wanting to make it really easy for employees to just navigate between their different types of benefits. So here's my healthcare guidance. Now I can click over here and get my dental guidance. The way this is set up is we've got a little wizard here, Theo, to help them understand what they're looking at. So Theo actually will walk the employee through what we're showing here. So Theo does what I would like to do, which is show you, okay, here's how to understand which dental plan is right for you. In this example, we have the employee choosing between two different dental plans. Right here at the top, we show them the premium. So here's for that dental plan, here's the premium cost monthly, annually, and then we add it to the health premium as well. They can get an idea of kind of the total monthly cost they're looking at and that total annual premium cost. Then we've got the plan highlights. So this is where we're able to show information about, why is this plan potentially right for you? So for example, is it a plan that only covers preventive dental care, but maybe not orthodontia or other services you might need? Is it a plan that comes with a limited network? So it's a good plan for someone who doesn't mind changing dentist, doesn't mind staying in that narrow network. We also allow for a customizable deal here. So the employer, if they have any messages about the specific dental plan, we can add it there. And so this is very high level, but again, for something like a dental plan, it's kind of the information you need to quickly make a decision, right? So you can understand again, kind of the key components of the plan and why it might be right for me and how it would affect my cost. But we do have the show details tab where we give them some more information about how the plan cost breaks down. So looking at really their coverage details. So what money goes towards the deductible, how does preventive care work, basic care, is orthodontia covered, all that.
Yeah, for us, I think the most important thing here was, again, parsing out the information and to try to reduce cognitive load. We knew it was a lot for the user. So providing that tabbed menu at the top so that they can look at one particular section at a time was important to us. And then even the call outs for Theo on dental and vision were really about, one, explaining what they're looking at, but two, the other thing is what we're doing here is we're actually shifting a mental model for the user. So with healthcare, we're comparing and choosing essentially what's the best one for them. With dental and vision, we're not necessarily doing that. We're providing them with, here's the data that you need to know in order to make an informed decision. And so part of introducing Theo at the top, walking them through what they're seeing in the section below, was to reframe that mental model and help them understand that this is slightly different than, say, medical. Companies will think about, okay, all right, I've got them to this point. They've seen the results. That is the end of the experience, right? And what was great was when we were having conversations was we generally think that you want to provide post-experience, if that makes sense. You want to allow for the user to have an opportunity to either connect if they have questions around the results itself. Again, kind of tying back to speaking to a human, right? So throughout this whole process, they've always been able to schedule a call if they want to. And that's, again, to anchor around that feeling of trust and security and and the ease of mind. And then the whole resource center was a way for them to continue to dig down and dig deeper into some things that they might be curious about. So we thought that the post questionnaire experience was equally as important as anything else. So yeah.